Welcome, everyone. I want you to listen carefully today because what I'm about to share is not just English tips. It's exactly how I went from freezing in conversations to speaking without fear. If you've ever known the words but couldn't speak them, if you've ever stayed silent because you thought you'd sound wrong, then this is for you. I know your struggle because I lived it. And today, I'm going to share 8 powerful points that can change your life. These steps will end your struggle, remove your fear, and help you speak English with confidence every single day. Point 1. Feel the struggle. I remember the feeling very clearly. I knew so many English words. I could read them. I could even understand them when someone else spoke. But when it was my turn to speak, nothing came out. My mind became empty, or worse, it filled with sentences in my own language first. Then I had to translate each word in my head, one by one, and by the time I finished, the other person had already moved on. It happened to me in small moments every day. I was in a shop once, and a tourist asked me in English where the bus stop was. I understood the question. I knew the words bus stop and turn left and go straight. But in that moment, my brain froze. I stood there searching for the perfect sentence. The silence felt heavy. The tourist smiled politely, then walked away without an answer. I felt my face burn. I walked home thinking about that short meeting for hours. This is what it feels like to struggle. You are not weak. You are not stupid. Your problem is not that you don't know English. Your problem is that your brain is still living in your native language. And because of that, speaking becomes a slow, tiring process. You know the answer, but it gets stuck in translation. I lived with this for years, at work, at school, even with friends who wanted to practice English. Every time I stayed silent, I felt smaller. I would think later, why didn't I say something? I could have said this. I could have said that. But in the moment, fear always won. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of sounding wrong. Fear of people laughing. If you have ever been in this place, you know how heavy it feels. It's like carrying a bag full of words but not being able to open it when you need it most. This is where my journey started. In the middle of that struggle, feeling stuck and wondering if I would ever speak freely. Point 2. Your breaking point. One day, something happened that changed everything for me. I was at work in the cafe. It was a quiet morning. A British couple walked in. They smiled and said, "Good morning. Can we get 2 cappuccinos, please?" I understood every single word. It was an easy sentence. But still, my brain froze. My heart started to beat fast. My hands shook. Inside my head, Spanish words were fighting with English words. I wanted to answer, but no sound came. Finally, I said, one moment, and walked away. They didn't laugh. They didn't get angry, but I could see in their faces that they felt uncomfortable. That hurt more than if they had laughed. I felt like I had failed them. I felt like I had failed myself. That night, I lay in bed thinking about it again and again. I thought, if I don't change now, this will happen for the rest of my life. That was my breaking point. I decided I would stop translating in my head. I would train my brain to live in English every day, no matter how strange it felt. Point 3. Live in English. The next morning, I woke up early. My heart was racing. I didn't know exactly what to do, but I knew I had to live in English, not just study it. I sat on my bed and looked around my room. I named everything in English: bed, pillow, blanket, window, chair. Then I made small sentences: soft pillow, blue blanket, open window, wooden chair. When I brushed my teeth, I didn't think in Spanish. I thought, I am brushing my teeth. On the way to work, I described things in my head in English: red car stopping, woman in a yellow coat crossing the street, small bakery on the left. I didn't care if my sentences were short. I only cared about using English all day. At work, I greeted every English-speaking customer first. Good morning. How are you today? My voice shook at first, but the more I did it, the easier it became. That day, I felt a small change inside me. Point 4. Silent practice. After a few days, I noticed something. Some of my best progress happened when I was completely silent. I used this silence to practice. In the morning, I sat on my bed for 5 minutes. I imagined a conversation in English, ordering food, asking for directions, talking to a friend. If a Spanish word tried to enter my mind, I pushed it away and replaced it with English. In the park, I picked up my coffee cup and described it in my head. This is a paper cup. It is white with a brown sleeve. The coffee smells strong. Then I made up a story about it. Maybe it came from a factory in another country. Maybe it traveled on a big ship. This made my English thinking stronger. I also replayed past conversations in my head, but fixed my mistakes. If I had said, "You wait one moment," I replayed it as, "Could you please wait a moment?" Silent practice became my secret weapon. It made English feel more natural before I even spoke out loud. Point 5. Small out loud steps. Silent practice had changed me. My mind was starting to think in English more often, but I knew something very important. If I wanted to speak fluently, I could not keep my English locked inside my head forever. I needed to open my mouth and let the words out. That scared me. Speaking out loud meant people could hear my mistakes. They could hear if I sounded wrong. But I also knew one thing. If I never spoke, I would never improve. So, I made a small promise to myself. I didn't tell anyone. It was my secret. The promise was simple. Every day, I will speak at least one real sentence in English to another person. Just one. It didn't have to be long. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be real. The first day I tried, my chance came earlier than I expected. The delivery man arrived at the cafe with boxes of milk and coffee beans. Usually I greeted him in Spanish, but that day I looked at him, took a deep breath, and said, "Good morning. How are you today?" My voice felt heavy. My heart was beating so fast that I could hear it. But I had done it. I had spoken English out loud to someone. That one sentence made me feel like I had just climbed a small hill. The next day, I added another small sentence. "Would you like sugar?" The day after that, I tried. "Your coffee will be ready in a moment." Each time, I felt a little less nervous. My voice was still shaky, but my fear was shrinking. One afternoon, a tourist came to the counter. She asked, "Do you know where the nearest ATM is?" Normally, I would have panicked. My mind would have gone blank. But this time, I smiled and said, "Yes, it's across the street, next to the pharmacy." She smiled back and said, "Thank you." That moment was small, but to me it felt like winning a gold medal. Speaking out loud, even with C's, small sentences, was giving me something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I didn't wait for the perfect moment. I didn't wait for a big conversation. I created small chances to speak. If a customer didn't ask me something, I asked them something simple. If no one spoke to me, I found a way to start a tiny conversation. I learned something very important. Progress comes from action, not from waiting. You don't need to speak perfectly to improve. You just need to speak. Even if your sentence is short. Even if your grammar is not perfect. Every time you speak, you are building a bridge between your thoughts and your voice. And with every step across that bridge, the fear becomes smaller, and your confidence becomes bigger. Point 6. Break the translation habit. Speaking out loud every day was helping me. My fear was smaller now. My confidence was growing. But there was still something that slowed me down. I noticed it every time I tried to speak a longer sentence. My brain was still taking the long road. First, I thought in Spanish. Then I translated into English. Then I spoke. It was faster than before, but it still took time. And in real conversations, even a short delay feels like forever. I knew I had to stop this habit if I wanted to be truly fluent. So, I started training myself to think directly in English. No middle step. No translation. I began with very short thoughts. 2 or 3 words at a time. I'm eating. I'm writing. It's raining. These short thoughts were fast. They didn't give my brain time to switch back to Spanish. I used them all day. When I was cooking, walking, cleaning, or even waiting for the bus, I kept building these tiny English thoughts. Then I made a new rule for myself. If I saw something, I had to name it in English immediately. If a bus came, I thought, bus arriving. If a child ran past me, I thought, child running. If my coffee spilled, I thought, coffee spilling. This made my brain connect English directly to the world around me. It was no longer just a school subject. It was the language of my everyday life. I also trained my brain to link English words directly to objects, not to my native words. When I thought about an apple, I didn't see the Spanish word manzana. I saw a red apple in my mind and heard the sound apple. This way, English became the first and only label for that object. The more I practiced, the faster my brain moved. Of course, sometimes I forgot a word. Before, I would stop speaking and try to translate. Now, I used rescue phrases to keep my English alive. If I forgot the word whisk, I said, it's something you use to mix eggs quickly. If I forgot the word broom, I said, it's something you use to clean the floor. The person still understood me, and I stayed in English without breaking the flow. I also practiced listening in a new way. When I watched movies or listened to podcasts, I didn't allow my mind to translate the words into Spanish. I forced myself to understand from context. If I didn't know a word, I guessed the meaning from the situation and kept going. This made my brain comfortable with not knowing everything. And that's important, because in real life, you won't understand 100% of what people say. Breaking the translation habit didn't happen overnight. It took patience and practice. But slowly, I started to notice something magical. Sentences came faster. My answers were smoother. And sometimes, without thinking about it, I realized I had spent the last 10 minutes thinking in English without a single Spanish word in my head. That's when I understood. Fluency is not just about speaking English. It's about making English the language our brain chooses automatically. Once you stop translating, you stop hesitating. And when you stop hesitating, you finally feel free to speak. Point 7. Full English environment. Breaking the translation habit changed many things for me. But I knew I could go further. I wanted English to feel like my first language, the one my brain always used without thinking. To do that, I had to surround myself with English all day, from morning to night. So I changed my environment. I put small sticky notes in my room. On my mirror, I wrote, "Smile, today is yours." On my wall, I wrote, "Good morning." On my door, I wrote, "Let's make it a great day." When I woke up, these words were the first thing I saw. My day began in English before I even left my bed. When I made breakfast, I spoke to myself out loud in English. "I'm slicing bread." "The butter is cold." "The coffee smells strong." I didn't care that no one was listening. I was training my mouth to move in English naturally. I also changed my phone to English. Every app, every setting, every notification, all in English. At first, it felt strange, but very quickly, my eyes got used to seeing English everywhere. It became normal. While walking to work, I listened to English podcasts or short stories. I chose topics I enjoyed like food, travel, and business. I repeated interesting sentences I heard. Sometimes I paused the audio and said the line myself. This helped me copy natural rhythm and tone. At work, I made a small rule. Speak at least one sentence in English every time I had a chance. Sometimes it was with a customer. Sometimes it was with a colleague. If there were no English speakers, I still practiced quietly in my head. At night, I watched a short English video before sleeping. I didn't translate. I tried to understand from the pictures and the voice. Even if I didn't understand every word, I stayed in English. The more English I put in my life, the less space there was for my old habit of thinking in Spanish. My brain began to accept English as something normal, something safe, something comfortable. And that is when I realized, you don't need to travel to an English-speaking country to live in English. You can create that world right where you are. Point 8. Motivational end goal. By now, English was everywhere in my life. I thought in it. I spoke in it. I listened to it. I read it. It was not a subject anymore. It was part of me. But I also understood something important. This journey is not about one magic day when you suddenly become fluent. It is about small steps that you take every single day, no matter how small they seem. I looked back at my journey and saw the changes. I remembered the day I froze with the British couple in the cafe. I remembered the first time I spoke a full sentence to the delivery man. I remembered my first real conversation with a tourist where I didn't panic. And now, here I was, speaking freely without thinking about every single word. Fluency is not a gift. It is not luck. It is a habit. You build it like a bridge, one brick at a time. Some days you will feel fast. Some days you will feel slow. But if you keep going, your bridge will grow strong enough to carry you anywhere. One evening, I was walking home. A tourist stopped me and asked for directions in English. I answered without fear, without translation, and without hesitation. He smiled and said, "Your English is really good." I smiled back, but inside I thought, this is not just English. This is freedom. That is what I want you to understand. Speaking English is not only about words and grammar. It is about feeling free to express yourself anytime, anywhere. It is about living in English until it becomes part of who you are. So I will ask you one question. Will you keep waiting for the perfect moment, or will you start today? The day you decide to live in English is the day your fluency becomes real. Take one step now. Speak one sentence today, then another tomorrow. And one day, you will look back and realize you are not just speaking English. You are living it. The end.